Hello everyone, this is Captain Play Guy. I've recently covered the reasons to try Guild Wars 2, as well as how to get your account set up to best suit your needs. Now I'll be covering the character creation process in Guild Wars 2. There are some important decisions when making your character. Allow me to help you make the decisions that are right for you. The first option you'll be presented with is the race of your character. There are 5 playable races in Guild Wars 2. Human, Char, Asura, Norn, and Sylvari. The first thing I want to talk about is what your choice of race will affect in a meaningful way. Your choice of race will affect where you start in the world, what racial skills will be available to you, the first few chapters of your personal story, and your home city from which the first few chapters of your personal story will begin. Everything else in the game is not affected very much by your choice of race. There are other smaller differences throughout the game, but they amount to cosmetic differences or changes in dialogue in reaction to your character's race. It doesn't affect where you can go in the game world, what class you can pick, or who you can play with. The vast majority of skins available in the game can be equipped no matter what race you play as. The camera can be affected by your character's race, as the character's height can affect the default height of the camera. However, this is an option you can turn on and off as you like. With that said, the flavor of the character you want to make can be enhanced or contrasted by your character's race. So let me give you a blurb of each race. Humans used to be the most widespread race in the world of Tyria. However, they've been pushed back by various forces, and the 3 major human nations, Kryta, Ilona, and Canton, have lost most to all contact for decades or centuries. Despite this, they do not allow their spirit to be dampened. They worship 6 gods: Dwayna, the goddess of healing and air; Melandru, the goddess of nature and earth; Lissa, the goddess of beauty and water; Balthazar, the god of war and fire; Grenth, the god of death and ice; and Cormir, the goddess of truth and spirit. The Char are ferocious, feline-like warriors. They have a militaristic society. Every Char, from the farmer to the imperator, is viewed as a soldier first. From the time a cub is weaned, they are entered into a Ferar, which is like the school for Char. There, away from their biological parents, cubs form into war bands, the primary family unit of the Char. There are 4 high legions in Char society: Blood, the traditional battlefield warriors; Ash, the cloak and dagger spies; Iron, the technological developers of warfare; and Flame, the magic wielders. However, the Char are in a civil war, with the Blood, Ash, and Iron legions combating the Flame Legion, who are trying to impose their will on Char society. The Asura are a race of tiny intellectual geniuses. Asura pride themselves on their knowledge and technology. They used to dwell underground until they were forced up to the surface by Primordus and its minions. They can be quite arrogant, but their work has advanced the state of the world exponentially. There are Asura gates in every major city, connecting to the other major cities of Tyria. The Asura believe in the eternal alchemy, the ideology of a grand cosmic mechanism that each and everything is a part of. No matter how big or how small, everything has its place and connections in the eternal alchemy. However, the Asura's views of the eternal alchemy are more scientific and philosophical rather than religious. The eternal alchemy is not something to be worshipped, but rather understood. The Norn are a race of towering hunters and warriors originally from the far Shiver Peaks. They stand at around 9 feet tall. The Norn value strength and valor. They are fiercely individualistic. Every Norn strives to build their legend through hunts or battle. The Norn traveled south from the far Shiver Peaks, having been driven away by Jormag. The Norn worship the spirits of the wild, the embodiment of animals and natural forces. The 4 great spirits of the wild are bear, wolf, raven, and snow leopard. There were more, but owl, ox, eagle, and wolverine battled Jormag to give the Norn and the great spirits time to move south to safety. Despite this, the Norn view it only as a setback and a challenge to overcome. The Sylvari are a plant-like race. They are the youngest race on Tyria, having only first appeared 25 years prior to the start of Guild Wars 2's story. The Sylvari are not born like the other races are. Instead, they awaken fully formed from the Pale Tree. Before they awaken, the Sylvari are connected to the Pale Tree through the Dream of Dreams. Here, the Sylvari is connected to the Pale Tree's consciousness and the vast pool of knowledge and experiences of past Sylvari. After emerging from the dream, Sylvari retain a portion of this knowledge and experience. Though the connection between the Sylvari and the Pale Tree is weaker once a Sylvari has emerged from the dream, they are still connected to the Pale Tree and to each other. Once you've decided on which race you want your character to be, the game will ask which gender you want your character to be. Gender doesn't affect anything meaningfully in the game. It's only cosmetic differences such as how certain armor skins will look. The next step in the character creation process is choosing your character's profession or class. There are 9 classes available in the game, although the Revenant is not available for free-to-play and paid core accounts. The blurbs about each of the classes is fine but limited. Also, that text saying what range each class prefers, that can be usually safely ignored. There are strong builds for each class, both ranged and melee and everything in between. With that out of the way, here is a brief rundown of each profession and their playstyle. The Warrior, a master of physical combat skills. They wear heavy armor and have the greatest number of weapons available for use. They gain adrenaline in battle that, when spent, lets them do a powerful attack. Warriors use banners and shouts to aid allies, signets and stances to empower themselves, and physical skills to knock foes off their feet. You should play the Warrior if you enjoy dealing damage up close, buffing allies, and or having a large selection of weapons. The Guardian. Defensive and protective magic users in heavy armor. They have the power of virtues. The virtues give them passive bonuses in battle, but can be activated to provide similar bonuses to allies. Guardians use meditations and consecrations to cleanse and protect allies, shouts to bolster allies in battle, signets to empower themselves, and spirit weapons to hinder enemies as well as benefit allies. You should play the Guardian if you like protecting your friends, classes that use light/holy magic, and or burning enemies. The Revenant, channelers of the mists. The mists being the afterlife among other things. Revenants wear heavy armor and invoke the power of legendary figures in the past of Tyria. For example, they can channel King Jalas Ironhammer to protect allies and themselves, or they can channel the assassin Shiro Tagachi to gain impressive mobility and damage. Perhaps the Revenant would choose to channel the centaur Ventari to heal and cleanse allies, or channel Malix to torment their foes. You should play the Revenant if you like having various but distinct playstyles for a class, lore and fan service for players of the original Guild Wars, and or filling unique niches in a group. The Ranger, experts of nature. They wear medium armor and travel around Tyria with their trusty pets. Rangers can order their pets to attack certain targets, retreat, or use a special skill unique to each species of animal. Rangers use traps to trip up foes, spirits to buff allies, survival skills to keep themselves alive. signets to strengthen themselves and their pets, and commands to order their pets to perform special actions in battle. You should play the Ranger if you like nature-themed classes, having pets in games, and or supporting your team. The Engineer, masterminds of technology and alchemy. On top of their normal skills, they also have special corresponding tool belt skills for extra options in combat. They also wear medium armor. Engineers employ turrets to help hold areas, elixirs to buff themselves and their allies, gadgets to provide utility in battle, and engineering kits to gain weapons for any situation. You should play the Engineer if you like playing a class that's a jack of all trades, technology themed, and or has a trick up their sleeve. The Thief, experts in the shadow arts. Thieves duck and weave in combat in their medium armor. They can teleport to enemies to steal from them and gain special skills to use in battle. Thieves use deception to teleport and hide from foes, preparations to control an area, signets to bolster their own abilities, tricks to become even more slippery, and venoms to buff their weapons and their allies' weapons to induce special effects. You should play the Thief if you want a highly mobile class, strong single target damage, and or relentlessly dodging your opponent's attacks. The Necromancer, magicians in the dark arts. They gather life force from the deaths of nearby creatures to channel into their Death Shroud. In the Death Shroud, they gain unique skills and use their life force as a temporary health bar. This offsets their light armor. Necromancers summon minions to do their bidding in battle, place wells to aid allies and hinder foes, equip signets to strengthen themselves, cast corruptions that place conditions on their opponents and themselves, and use spectral skills to generate life force while making themselves hardier or subverting their enemy's control. You should play the Necromancer if you want to play a class with strong control aspects, a death-themed class, or unconventional group support. The Elementalist, wielders of the four elements. They change their elemental attunements on the fly to suit their needs. Whatever element they are attuned to, fire, water, air, or earth, will change their weapon skills as well. They are also a light armor class. Elementalists conjure elemental weapons, cast glyphs that differ depending on their current element attunements, as well as cast cantrips that instantly give the Elementalist more defensive utilities, signets to bolster their own abilities, and use arcane skills to cast non-elemental magic that often hits for critical damage. You should play the Elementalist if you like playing element-themed classes, supportive classes, and or classes that can do area damage. The Mesmer, casters of illusions. They summon clones and phantasms to disorient their foes. Mesmers can then shatter their clones to damage and further disorient enemies. They wear light armor. Mesmers cast illusions to bring about their clones and phantasms, glamours to help allies and hinder enemies, manipulations to evade and redirect, signets to provide themselves with bonuses in combat, and mantras to instantly cast spells that attack foes or aid allies. You should play the Mesmer if you like mental mind magic, confusing your opponent, and or the idea of creating clones. After you have made your choice of profession, you'll be able to customize your character's appearance. You've got choices of faces, hairstyles, skin color, fur color, body shape, and more. You can toggle the armor on and off to see certain features better, like tattoos. You can also toggle the lighting. This option is most useful for Sylvari to see how your character's glow would look at night. Oh yeah, Sylvari glow in the dark. You can also select the dyes of your starting armor. The next step will ask you a question related to the profession you chose. This choice will affect your starting gear for most classes. Some classes, such as the Thief and the Revenant, will only have the choice of what skin you want to start with for your headgear. For other classes like the Guardian and the Engineer, there will be a choice between different pieces of gear. For the Ranger, this question will determine which pet you start with. The choice of pets the Ranger can start with will be affected by the race you choose. There are overlaps of pets on this step. For example, the Human and the Norn can both choose to have a bear as their starting pet. No matter which class you pick, don't worry too much about this step. For Rangers, you aren't locked out of any pets in the game based on this choice. You can obtain every other pet after the tutorial if you choose Ranger. And for every other class, you'll be replacing your starting gear early on. The next choice will ask you about your character's personality. You have the choice of Charm, Dignity, and Ferocity. Don't sweat too much over this choice. This doesn't affect gameplay in virtually any way. This only determines what certain dialogue options you'll have with certain NPCs in the game. You aren't entirely bound by this choice even. There are a lot of interactions in this game regarding personality where you can choose a response that doesn't fit into your initial personality choice. Through this, you can completely shift your character's personality. But again, this doesn't affect any mechanics beyond certain dialogue interactions. I find this best to use as a starting point for role-playing your character. The next 3 steps will determine the first 2 chapters of your personal story. These choices are race-specific. The next 2 questions will determine the first 2 chapters of your personal story for the majority of the races. The remaining 3rd question in this section ranges from being flavor for your character to determining certain characters you will interact with in the first 2 chapters of the personal story. The flavor choices for the 9th question are for humans and Norn. The choices that will affect which characters appear in your story are for the Asura and Sylvari. For the Char, it will be the 9th question that determines the 2nd chapter of your personal story. The 8th question will determine your partner for the first 3 chapters of your personal story. After all that, you arrive at the last and perhaps most difficult step: naming your character. You have a lot of freedom in what you can name your character. The rules for names will be on screen. Once the name has fulfilled all the rules, a green checkmark will appear by all of them. However, you still aren't guaranteed to be done. There might be another character with the same name already out there. Once you've named your character successfully, you'll begin your game. You'll get a cutscene summarizing your character's race and choices, which can be skipped if you want, but you'll be missing out on lore. And then the game begins proper.